Today's episode is how to cope when you're witnessing tragedy. We're going to talk about secondary trauma, or the phenomenon of being a witness or bystander to tragic circumstances. Stay tuned for this episode of Minding Your Amygdala. Hey creators, welcome to Minding Your Amygdala, the brain, body, and behavior podcast where you'll learn to awaken to your emotions, get informed about your biology, and motivated to use skills to improve your mental health. I'm your host, Dr. Lana, America's one and only trauma psychiatrist. Do you recognize the critical importance of emotions and mental health? Do you want to know more about how to self-recover from trauma? Do you want to better understand the updated science about how our brain and body shapes our behaviors? If you answered yes to any of these questions, then you're in the right place. This podcast is focused on making complex brain science simple and usable. You'll learn the 6 primitive brain systems predictably programmed by trauma and empathy skills practice, my unique methodology that can help you improve your own T, thoughts, emotions, and actions. I'm the Skills Over Pills doc, but I'm also a mom of 3, a busy entrepreneur, and a human being trying to make it through multiple global pandemics just like you. Minding Your Amygdala will teach you transformative ways that you can approach your day-to-day life, and I'll give you strategies to break free from the trauma cycle. All right, let's get started. Hey creators, I'm back. And I want to take a moment to check in with you, and one more time. How you doing? I don't know about you, but I have experienced quite a bit of secondary trauma this week and last week and the week before. So let's get into it. As I was sitting here thinking about what to say about the circumstances with Damar Hamlin, and how many people reached out to me or commented about their experience of feeling traumatized by seeing what happened to him. And if you're not familiar, which I would imagine that you are, but if you're not familiar with Damar Hamlin of the Buffalo Bills, suffered a cardiac arrest during the first quarter of the January 2nd game as they were playing the Cincinnati Bengals. And he was making what appeared to be a routine tackle. But it seems that, whatever happened, he immediately needed resuscitation and CPR on the field. And it was clear that he was in medical distress. And you have never heard the loudness of silence that happens when someone is life is in danger in a medical emergency. As a medical trainee, I have been there, and it is some of the scariest, most terrifying moments that you can ever experience. And so what is so rare about that is that so many people witnessed in real time these events. Unfortunately, usually when painful, bad things like this happen, the witnesses are either close family members or the people involved in the incident, maybe friends and family involved in whatever is going on, or the people who are spectating in a public space, and even people who come upon people in bad medical circumstances. So maybe coming onto the scene and seeing someone in medical distress, it's scary. And you will probably never feel as helpless as you may feel witnessing someone being very close space of losing their life. It is a uniquely traumatizing experience to see another human being die. Now, there are certainly professions and circumstances in which there is justified circumstances for why things may happen, but yet the programming of human beings is such that we recognize that death is something most of the time as we mature. Now, often children don't have this full awareness. The evolving brain, the developing brain does take time to be able to come to a space of recognizing full humanity. And also, unfortunately, with the traumatized primitive state that we live in, we often dehumanize each other with labels and judgment. So, staying into this space where we're watching someone in fear of losing their life, it does a few things to the brain. And for one, whenever we experience something extreme, the brain takes a snapshot of it. The way our biology works, our brain is like, oh, that thing that's painful, horrifying, fear-provoking, worst nightmare kind of scenario. Oh, let me roll tape, right? Now it's going to roll distorted tape because you're also going to be experiencing adrenaline and the impact of the environment around you. But when your mind is experiencing something extreme, it records it in your neurons more heavily, more intensely than when things are in a calmer state. So many people mention that after having even seen it on television or even heard about it or seen some of the footage, they had nightmares, flashbacks. They were worried. They were anxious for a while. They might have felt more jumpy or more worried or concerned about their own heart health or that of their family members. And considering what our brain does after any acute stressor, that makes sense, right? Many people were exposed to something that was pretty scary. And thank God Damar Hamlin lived and continues to recover and will hopefully be able to tell his story in his own words and, really continue to spread love and do positive things for the world. Contrasting that experience with the experience of being a witness to a Black man who was basically beat to death, for lack of better words. Tyre Nichols was assaulted by 5 police officers, other Black men, and was so severely beaten, kicked, and tased, and then disregarded that he subsequently died of his injuries. And all of this was done while he was restrained, crying out for help and unable to defend himself. So there's clearly something wrong with these circumstances. And then for that video to be released, it is very likely, I don't know for sure if it was at the request of his family. And I could imagine that it's important for the world to be a witness to what was done to their loved one. I hope that it was coordinated with them. But even from that space, not everyone will want to see that. And it is a very difficult and painful thing to watch. And I want to help people acknowledge that being a witness is painful. The definition of witnessing or to witness is to give or afford evidence. An individual who, being present, personally sees or perceives a thing, a beholder, a spectator, an eyewitness. So I want to be clear that trauma is not just what happens to the individual. The people who witness what happens to a traumatized individual also are subject to trauma because our brains, especially those who may look like that person, may live in that area with that person, may have many overlapping features and thought process who identify with their story, they will empathize more deeply because they can easily see themselves in that other person. Now, one of our major challenges as society is that we lack empathy severely lack empathy. Empathy meaning the ability and the willingness to take the perspective of the other, to wear the other's experience, not just their emotions. And when we think about lack of empathy and we think about the violence that we're experiencing in our society, there's something inherently damaging about seeing human beings treating each other in a animalistic way, point blank, period. Humans like to think of ourselves as being all high and mighty. And in some ways, on the earth, we are. We do get to be in charge for what's going on here. But looking around, it doesn't seem as if we're doing a very good job of being the manager of our resources that we profess to be. So the reality is that when we see tragedy, when we are fed horrific experiences through our eyes, through our ears, into our bodies and our brains, it can't help but affect us. If we all have a part of our brain called the somatosensory cortex. The somatosensory cortex is the part of our brain that registers pain. And the part of your brain that registers pain does not differentiate between physical and psychological pain in its response. It simply notes that pain is present and it sets off the biological cascade. It translates that pain to you. This is the reason why you can learn some news that can feel so painful to you that you feel like you want to die. Like feel like, hey, just toss me on in that grave with him because this hurts too bad. I don't know if I want to live with this kind of pain and feeling if this is what I'm going to have to feel every day. And even if you are not a person who may have had struggles with suicidality, certainly painful losses, severe disappointments, living on the edge of financial ruin, or, any number of the stressful circumstances that people are dealing with these days would take somebody to the point of thinking about, as we said back in the day, 2 tears in the bucket. All right. Yeah, I told y'all I cuss. Now, when we're talking about how to cope with witnessing tragedy, I think it's helpful to think about it in the 3 A's: acknowledgement, awareness, and action. Acknowledgement is really about taking the moments that are needed to acknowledge that psychological pain hurts, right? We live in this society that's, very much intent on putting forward a image as if the things that happen around us are not painful and that we should just keep a straight face, right? And we should not demonstrate that we have any sort of internal discomfort. To this point in society, we have been thinking about athletes as superhumans, right? One of the things that was just so shocking about the circumstances of seeing a young, healthy individual seemingly at the peak of physical health suddenly be very, very human. And that often is such a extreme shock to the system for many people that they experience it in even more extreme because they don't necessarily think about people in their full reality. I think it's healthy that we're now beginning to recognize that even though we see these athletes have what seems like superhuman abilities, our expectations of them to have superhuman recovery time, ability to absorb pain as if nothing is happening to their body or their brain. I think it's time for us to get past the point of trying to act as if psychological and physical pain does not exist, right? And just acknowledge that all human beings have a mental health landscape. I think about how we now have athletes who are coming out and saying, I had performance anxiety. Even when I was winning Olympic medals, I was struggling with depression. Or even when I was training and performing at elite spaces, I was struggling with self-confidence and doubt, or perfectionism, or substance use, or eating disorders. And because people perform well and perform at high levels, or because people are extraordinarily skilled at doing things, we often tend to dehumanize them with labels, right? And when we talk about people as being the goat and being a beast and being a monster and all of those things, even though those words seem harmless, I think it takes us away from the ability to acknowledge that the human body has limits and that those limits need to be acknowledged and respected. And that when we experience tragedy, we're not supposed to just move on as if things have not happened. It is absolutely very real and very okay for us to have emotional processes about the things that are going on. In fact, if we embraced our emotions, we would be the healthier for it. So, my next point, my next A, I should say, is awareness. The first element was to acknowledge the psychological pain and that it's real. It's not all in your head. When you experience traumatic things, my definition of trauma is something that you experience negatively that changes the way you think about yourself, other people, and the rest of the world. You don't have to be the person who is immediately experiencing that trauma, but you do have to develop some awareness of the internal turmoil that traumatic experiences will create. When we go through traumatic things, as I mentioned, your brain changes. It updates its programming. It recognizes that now something that is bad, negative, painful, however it was perceived, there's the potential for that thing to happen, and I need to be on high alert for that thing to help prevent it from happening again. That's how your brain thinks. And so after secondary trauma, meaning this can be actively witnessing something like seeing a crime happen, being present for something violent happen, being a victim of the crime, or even watching videos of it, being aware that even after consuming a video of someone being beat or harmed in that way, it can have an impact on your mood even hours, days, weeks later. And that is because the internal processing in our brain is going to develop that conscious attention to what you've just witnessed or what has been put into your awareness. So even if you don't find yourself obsessively thinking about something, it still can be running in the back of your mind, affecting your mood. You may find yourself more snappy or more irritable. You may find yourself more questioning of others' motivations or intentions. You may find yourself being distrustful or hyper aware of the possibility of someone behaving in an unpredictable or strange or different way. You may misread things. You may find yourself misreading the facial expressions and the behaviors, actions, or words of others. Because remember, we do not experience the world as it is. We experience the world as our brain interprets it to be, which means that we don't even hear the exact words that other people say. We interpret the intentions that their words and their communication, including their body language, tone, volume, and other elements, we interpret what that means. So awareness is really about becoming more aware of your mood and your conscious internal state at any given time. Most of us actually operate in a state of mind that is not directly aware of the emotions that you're experiencing at any given time. Now, they're there because your brain is running and it doesn't shut off even when you go to sleep. Your amygdala, the part of your brain that is generating emotions, is producing them at all times. Even when you're calm, even if you're numb or checked out, your brain is still producing internal invisible sensations and surges and urges that we translate as feelings and emotions. So, having the awareness that you may feel more triggered after you've experienced or absorbed someone's trauma. You've listened to a story, or someone has told you about something, or you experienced something. It would make sense that you might feel edgier, and then having that awareness allows you to maintain a level of control over how you are experienced by others. Many of us, because we're taught to ignore our emotional state, don't actively recognize how contagious our emotional environment is when we are around other people. So if you are making snarky, snappy comments that you think are funny, but other people experience as hurtful or edgy, you may not be recognizing that, hey, you're still kind of activated because of these traumatic experiences and other things. Maybe you're not getting as much restful sleep because your mind is running more. So one of the things that helps to counteract that is validation. Validation is an in-depth skill, and I probably will do a whole episode on validation. But the simplest way to think about validation is acknowledging that another person's or another version of reality exists and that it is fair, right? Let me not use the word fair, because even the word fair is subjective. What I would say is that to validate is to acknowledge that something is real. It may not be something you agree with, but it is where you are allowing for the other person's perspective. Many times you may only be able to say, I can see how you see it that way. I've asked enough questions. I've gotten enough information that I get that if I were thinking of it the way that you are, I would probably feel the same way about it. But the importance of validation is to really recognize that your mood is connected to what you are telling yourself about the circumstances. And so anytime you are feeling something acutely negative and you feel like it may be related to the traumatic experience that you may have seen or witnessed, it's important to take a few moments and just validate that when you have experienced something bad or painful, that it's okay that sometimes those emotions will swing to the negative side. It's a myth that our emotions are supposed to be stable and happy all the time and everybody just, maintain one flat mood. That's not how life works. That's not reasonable. And so that actually takes me to our final point of action. Acknowledgement, awareness, of your mood and action. Purposeful action can be so helpful when it comes to addressing secondary trauma. Many times in the circumstances that we're witnessing, we feel extraordinarily helpless to help to do anything about what's happening in front of us, whether it's someone in a medical emergency because of a health problem, or someone that is experiencing, who is being a victim of a crime, which that young man, Tyre Nichols, was truly a victim of a crime. But the reality is that we live in a society where it would not be strange to come upon a situation where you may have to intervene for someone who is in crisis. Speaking of interventions, shouts out to Denny Kellington, the assistant trainer, who got right to it, recognized that Damar was in distress and provided CPR training and led AED. A automatic electronic defibrillator device was available and resuscitated him on the field. The reality is that we train for those things, but we pray that we never need to use those trainings. And it's one thing to practice for something, and it's quite another thing to make your brain stay calm, function, and do what needs to be done in the heat of the moment. So shouts out to that entire team and the entire healthcare team that helped to make sure that he was receiving the best of care. But the reality is that we often do not think about and acknowledge the many people who are connected on the other side of those traumatic experiences, because you have the first responders, the EMTs, yes, even law enforcement that is there to respond and to help. And then you have the spectators and people who witness things. If it's in a crowded space, you have a general public. You have the news and media audience nationwide or internationally that consumes the byproducts of these violent experiences. And they also have to deal with those experiences on a level that they take home every day. So the more that we create awareness and put action to making changes for whatever problem there is that we face, the more action towards progress that we create, the healthier our society becomes. What I mean by action is that there are going to be many people who are thinking about, man, I don't know if football is safe for my child, because they have once again seen the incredible risk that these high-profile athletes take. And football is not the only risky sport, but certainly it is one of the riskier sports. But we can start advocating for changes on a professional level and on a youth level, on an amateur level. We can push for improved safety equipment, improved research. We can raise money and make donations to causes that are raising awareness and changing the model of the sport to make it as safe as it can be under the circumstances, and also making sure that teams have equipment like our defibrillator devices available in amateur settings to be able to address this. Because, even in the weeks between what's happened recently, what we talked about on this episode, we've heard of youth sports participants passing out and losing consciousness, even needing to be revived, or some dying on the field. I mean, we've heard of multiple instances of people experiencing cardiac arrest and other challenges. So what it really boils down to is that when you witness trauma, one of the most important things to do is think about, what action can I take that helps to refuel me? For many people, it's about activism. I know many people who are protesting, who are going to city council meetings, who are meeting with their state and city officials and law enforcement officials and first responders to think about what type of reform and retraining and restructuring is truly necessary to change so that we don't have these experiences over and over again of not only damaging individuals, but traumatizing whole communities with these experiences. So all of that coming back around to the fact that we have what I call societal traumatic stress syndrome. Societal traumatic stress syndrome is a widespread state of trauma. I don't even want to call it post-traumatic because it ain't post. It's still happening. We're still having traumas almost every day, from gun violence and mass shootings and political chaos and threats of war and reports of war and climate chaos and weather changes. And it really boils down to, as a society, we need to heal. And you can only heal by addressing the problem. So I invite you to join me on March 9th through 11th from 10 to 4 p.m. Central Standard Time for my virtual live event, The Trauma Cure. The Trauma Cure is a 3-day event, and you can join me from wherever you are in the country, wherever you are in the world. You can learn more at thetraumacure.com. And in that particular 3 days, we are going to get more done than you have probably gotten done in 3 years of your therapy sessions. Come on now, let's keep it real, okay? In those 3 days, you are going to receive information about your brain and how 6 primitive brain systems create so much of your internal mental health experience that you must know them in order to get yourself well. We're going to go deeper into societal traumatic stress syndrome and how we heal not only as individuals, but also as communities, as a society. And we're going to dive into the centering healing power of empathy and how with practice, we can create a society that is healthier and more healed. I hope to see you there. It's going to be a great time. Tune in for the next episode of Minding Your Amygdala. Please review, like, and subscribe to this podcast.